Hey guys, Table here. Today we got a new entry in the strategy guide series. I'm calling this class Capping Destroyers. You can see I got Bill Halsey on the screen here, and we're going to pop the kit up here. American gunboats, kind of a prototypical version of this line. I'm also envisioning kind of German destroyers, British destroyers. When I list off these ships, by the way, in the introduction of these type of videos, that's just the prototypical version of these things. You can set up, for instance, let's say a French destroyer as a capping destroyer, potentially, or a Japanese destroyer. You can alter the build to make a ship that might not necessarily be natively inclined to perform a certain role, but if you spec it a certain way, perhaps it becomes functional. And you can always create your builds to be blends of these roles. Of course, these are just kind of, archetypal categories. Anyway, capping destroyer, in my opinion, this is going to be the most important piece on the entire board, and especially when it comes to domination mode games. As we got here, this background game will be an example of domination mode, and we're going to see how important this type of ship is. Capping destroyers have two primary roles. Number one, capping. Capping is a huge part of domination mode in particular. That's why these are extremely important for domination mode. We're going to do entries on the different game modes, strategies for the modes. But domination mode, the only winning strategy is, to consistently pursue anyways, is to control the caps and win on the score. That's how you're going to win most of the games. You can see here in this particular game, each team currently controls a cap. Each team's currently getting 4 points per second. That's from controlling that cap. So if you got all four of these, 4 points every 5 seconds. So if you got all four caps, you'd be getting 16 points every 5 seconds. In a race to 1,000, that's going to shorten the time to get there dramatically. So we don't want to cede control of caps, and we certainly want to pursue control of caps. That's how we win domination mode. The capping destroyers are the scoring piece in your team's composition. Number one, you can get on the cap. We're using our destroyer concealment, of course, to get on there. The only other ships that are really going to reliably spot us, of course, are other destroyers. This is pre-carriers coming up, by the way. This is going to dramatically alter this particular class and ship role once that piece is introduced into the game, but we'll have to come up with new content once that happens. Right now, though, the capping destroyers are the main scoring threat on your team. That's why everyone else on your team, your main goal should be to support your capping destroyers. And to be honest, looks like we got some widespread torpedoes there. To be honest though, all destroyers are capping destroyers. We're just calling this particular subgroup capping because they're the best at it. They're the alpha predators, or the alpha scorers in this particular strategy game. But let's say we have a Japanese destroyer who isn't as good at capping because it doesn't have very good gun power. It can't duel other destroyers that it encounters close range. That's why it's not a capping destroyer. It's what I would classify as a zoning destroyer. But as the game develops and the other team's destroyers inevitably kill themselves because of their negligent play, that'll open up room for those Japanese zoning destroyers to become capping destroyers. So the roles are fluid. Just because you start off in one role doesn't mean you don't have to adjust your playstyle as the game goes on. But keep that in mind. Destroyers, your main goal for domination mode game is to cap. And that's for basically all the ships on your team. Cruisers, your main goal is to cap. Battleships, your main goal is to cap. Not necessarily your ship, though. You're supporting the people on your team that are capping. If you have one destroyer left, it's the Japanese destroyer. That ship is the ship that's primarily responsible for capping. That's why it's such a drag on your team when these Japanese destroyers get behind enemy lines and spend 12, 13, 14 minutes trying to torp battleships instead of playing the objectives. That's when those particular players are throwing the game actively. So very, very important role. Supersedes all other roles. Capping destroyers in capture the base mode, a little bit less important. Capping and capture the base mode is a way to slightly alter the score and a lot of capture the base mode games will come down to score. So if you get on the enemy team's base, you stop them from accruing points, that'll allow your team to gradually increase their lead or increase the differential in raw points that are being accumulated by the bases themselves. But in capture the base mode, if it comes down to scoring, usually it comes down to who has killed the most ships plus the capping scoring. So the capping is kind of a tiebreaker in that situation. And just briefly, actually capping the base, once in a while that's going to be the optimal play to make in capture the base mode game, but that's even less significant in my opinion than getting on the base to help control the score, which is usually how those games are going to be determined. Either one team wipes the other team off the map, or it comes down to a 15-minute game and whoever has the most points is going to win that. So still an important role in capture the base, but not as important as domination mode here. And taking a look at this game, what are we doing now? We're on their base. We came over here, we located the enemy destroyer, we removed that. We're going to be talking about that role, or that aspect of the ship's role here in a little bit. But in terms of the scoring strategy, we've kind of cleared the side out here, which is good. That allows us to get on this base. Getting on the base stops the accrual of points for their team. So our team continues to get 4 points every 5 seconds due to the fact that we have one cap that's under our control and it's not currently contested. They, up until just a second ago, had one cap under their control, but it was contested by me being on there. That prevented the points from accruing. Now we're getting our 4 points from the cap we started every 5 seconds, started with every 5 seconds. But now, instead of them getting 4 points every 5 seconds from the cap they started with, we've flipped that and added it to our own bankroll. So that's an 8-point every 5 seconds swing, targeting the cap that they controlled and flipping that. We're going to talk about the individual game modes scoring, and hopefully that aspect of it will come up in that video. But targeting caps that the enemy actually controls, more valuable than targeting, say, B here. I could have gone over to B, captured this one to start with. Maybe that would have been a little bit easier. But by getting that southeastern cap under our control, that's an 8-point every 5 second swing, as opposed to just a 4-point increase of our lead every 5 seconds. So both of them very valuable, and you can see as soon as we completed the capture and the flip of their previously controlled objective, we immediately came over here. We're not focused on torping ships or doing anything like that. How we win domination mode games is we control the majority of caps for the longest amount of time. Almost all domination mode games are going to come down to who controls the objectives the best. Once in a while, other scoring methods are going to come into play and decide those outcomes of the game. But like we mentioned earlier, if your primary objective when you load into these domination mode games isn't thinking, how can I help my team capture and control objectives, you're not actually thinking about how to win the game. You're just thinking about playing some certain aspect of the game, which really isn't that relevant to winning. Capturing, controlling objectives, domination mode, that's how we do it. Capping destroyers, the strongest piece in domination mode, and one that's vitally important to protect, one that's vitally important to play well. Speaking of protecting your capping destroyers, eliminating enemy radar cruisers, extremely important to that role for every other ship. You want to support your capping destroyers. Leaving those radar cruisers to have full health halfway through the game, that means they've been targeting the wrong ships, my teammates. Either that or these particular ships haven't been spotted, in which case there's nothing we can do about it. But now that they're spotted for sure, everyone on our team needs to be bombing on them. We've already eliminated their destroyer. It was a capping destroyer, but it was their only destroyer. So their main scoring piece we removed. And that, of course, is one of the capping destroyer's other roles, like we mentioned. You want to get in there, you want to kill the other destroyers, particularly the capping destroyers. That removes the enemy team's ability to easily score and affect the score by getting on caps and flipping them. Removing the pieces from the board that can easily do that, that's a great role for this ship to be doing. We're up there, we're good at fighting those ships. The Germans, the British, they have their sonar smoke combos. So all three of these prototypical lines of ships, you know, the American gunboats, if you can't tell, are very good at bombing on destroyers close range, and they have excellent smoke. So they kind of have a lot of tools. They don't have the sonar, but all three of those prototypical lines kind of excel at getting in there, capturing the base, at least contesting the base, and then killing any enemy destroyer who's going to be also sniffing around, trying to add those caps to their team's bankroll and get the points going for their team. So because of the dual roles there, number one, we're actually increasing our team's scoring by going out and getting those objectives, but we're also cutting in to the enemy's ability to score by hopefully removing their scoring pieces off the board. That's the importance of these pieces. And if you're going to load into a capping type destroyer and get yourself killed within 2 seconds of the game starting, well, you're massively failing your team. I mean, this is a very hard role to play. It's probably the most important role of the game currently, and it needs to be treated with a little bit of respect. I don't want you to be overly conservative. We're not talking about hiding behind an island, not spotting or doing anything like that, just trying to stay alive while you're shivering and whimpering to yourself. But we need to be focusing on primarily staying alive for the entirety of the game. The earlier these pieces go down, you can see what happened to the red team. They lost their capping destroyer right off the bat in this particular game. They haven't been able to affect the score whatsoever, except for get this one Western cap that they basically sent the vast majority of their fleet to attack right off the bat, and that's all they've been able to do. Now, for the blue team, all we have to do is hold these ships out of the 3 caps that we control till the time runs up. You know, I don't think we're even going to have enough time to kill all the other ships because we're scoring so many points every 5 seconds. So what we've seen this ship do this game, I think, is kind of how the capping destroyer needs to be played. Number one, we're trying to get the score going in our team's favor by getting those objectives, flipping the enemy's objectives to our favor, and killing their scoring pieces. We've done all that. Now we're just kind of adding a little bit of icing to the cake, supporting our team at this point in time. We can't really reliably get on this A cap here since they have everyone on their team sitting on it, so we can no longer be affecting our scoring role, and we can't be using our counter destroyer role, of course, because we've already killed all the destroyers. So here we drop back and we're just playing a support role at this point in time. But that's good. We've done our job, and our team is definitely in position to win. Positioning-wise, for domination mode, basically what you should do is draw a tight oval around all the caps in the game. So, you know, from the outside of A to, you know, circling C and D or whatever those ones are over there. Not a lot of room on either side. Inside of that oval, or whatever that shape ends up being, that's kind of the capping destroyer's positioning guide. And then you need to be looking on the map saying, okay, how can we get points coming in? How can we flip caps? Because again, that was a double scoring play when we can flip the cap. Where are the enemy destroyers located? We need to have a very strong focus on finding those enemy scoring pieces, removing them from the board. And doing all these things requires looking on the map quite a bit. Destroyers, high action, high velocity type of gameplay often. So map awareness kind of is easiest to drop off when you're playing destroyer, especially if you're up in close, you know, if you're in the thick of things. But whenever you get a chance to do it, you got to be evaluating that map. Where can we score points? Where can we flip objectives? Where can we capture objectives? Where can we kill those destroyers? All extremely important, and all are going to take your focus. Here, you're going to see the least important role for all destroyers, but especially these capping destroyers, torping battleships in the back line. Never once in a million years did it cross my mind to torp this guy until the game's been effectively won. And you can say, well, why aren't you going on A there, Mr. Capping Destroyer? You're not even doing your own role correctly. We've already won the game at this point in time, so we might as well run up the score a little bit and try and torp this guy. But, you know, this is not a play that affects the outcome of the game, except for the fact that the game ends when we happen to kill all the enemy team. That's the secondary scoring mode, less important in domination mode, but the team HP scoring is always running in the background, and you can always win the game by reducing the team's HP to 0. So at this point in time, we just elect to go for the second scoring method, even though we spent so much time and effort working on the game score and winning that way. So anyway, that's a look at the capping destroyer strategy for you guys. Hope you did enjoy it. If you did, please hit the thumbs up. This is part of the grand strategy playlist. This is going to be a complete strategy found on the Grand Strategy playlist, so check that out. Thumbs up, subscribe if you're new. Questions, comments, leave them below, and we'll see you all later. All right, peace.